What is up, down and sideways, you beautiful individuals? It is another EPF League Unlock. Eric and Mark here with you. Fine, ladies and gentlemen, as we preview first stand action, the first stand in the history of competitive League of Legends. It's a week-long blitz. We've got a single round robin best of threes before one team's eliminated, getting you to the top four if you're not familiar with this format. And I mean, with that, that's the jumping out first thing to look at for this event is who's winning the whole thing, and can you make a case against Hanwha is really the main thing you're talking about here.
Yes, you can make a case against Hanwha. How strong that case, that argument will vary between the individuals and how your biases tend to, or how much LCK you've watched. I think we can put it at the end of the day, because yes, Hanwha Life will be an overwhelming favorite and a deserved favorite to a lot of people, and not just one where it's simply I'm taking the winner angle type of thing, but one where it is a proven and deserved upgrade and angle on view on this team from last year to this year, and everything they've earned and proven out there on the Rift, that Hanwha Life should be the favorites. There is a world where you can talk about a squad from the LPL like Top Esports. There is a world where you can't even talk about a miracle run for either of Team Liquid or Carmine Corp, that they find the right type of gameplay and match scheduling, that this works out for them in some type of world. That's possible. Is it likely? Absolutely not. I think it is Hanwha Life as that runaway favorite. There is an angle. I want to talk about Top Esports, Kanavi, the run that they had through that LPL playoff gauntlet at the end, and that blitz of game after game after game, series after series. That Top Esports is proven enough to be a challenger for this Hanwha Life team, but they should still be the overwhelming favorite for the event.
And listen, Top Esports, that gauntlet they ran at the LPL is basically the exact same time frame. This whole tournament is 6 days. Their whole playoff run was in 6 days, and those were best of fives, not best of threes. So, I mean, when you look at the way to qualify for this, that's where you're really favoring, again, Top Esports is comfortable, but Hanwha played far and away the most games, and Hanwha and Carmine Corp are the only two teams out of the five that have actually played a best of five, that have actually had to go deep into the pockets for some of these fearless picks, and Hanwha did it in every single playoff series.
And then again, so you have those two, and then you add in maybe to a different value, the Top Esports run through that LPL playoffs, that blitz, right, of that we're going to have essentially here with First Stand, where it is just match after match after match after match, day after day after day, as you're rolling through this week. You're looking at Team Liquid and the Flying Oysters, squads that have not had that same type of test, not had that same type of thing. And that's not to say to look at these rosters and say, have you ever experienced a game 5? Of course you look through and you find that experience on both of these rosters. But as far as, the power level and the proven status of these teams heading into this event, it does bring up that question mark. And knowing that that is going to be where you do have to finally prove your. Can you have that confidence? Can you have that faith in Fearless that you can pull it off in Game 5?
So if we're giving Hanwha, let's say, 75% chance that they're going to be the victors, we're giving Top Esports maybe 15%, and the final 10 goes to one of the other three teams coming away with a really big upset to take home the title. But if you go the other end of the spectrum, okay, who is going to be the first team eliminated? Because remember, only 5 teams, only one team is getting eliminated before semifinals, and it seems the easiest pick to say the Flying Oysters will be the squad, but time and time again, whether it's the LCP, the PCS, we underestimate the top seed coming through there, and they either compete against the top dog from the LCK or the LPL, or they're upsetting somebody from the West, because the playoff run that the Oysters just had was pretty damn dominant.
And I think it does deserve a little bit of extra recognition and credit that this isn't just, okay, this is, another one of these minor region type of teams coming on through, and, you've carved yourself out within that small region type of thing. This is, again, more so of that combination, that LCP, and proving through all of those regions that you are this one coming through and representing for them and being that type of challenge for everybody else. yes, they are going to be that easy pick, I think. And easy might be, the wrong word for it, but going to be that popular pick for a lot of people to take as that first elimination from the event. I think there's an angle where you can talk about whether they're going to succeed or find, availability to be competitive against these teams at the event. But you can also take the angle to examine some of the other teams at the event. And I think under a microscope, if you're looking at Team Liquid and Carmine Corp to maybe a slightly lesser degree, you could throw them into the same type of conversation, same type of questions that you would be throwing at a team like the Flying Oysters and looking at them and seeing, well, are you going to succeed? Are you going to struggle? What's it going to be?
Yeah, I think it comes down to these young players because obviously both the Flying Oyster, they got the 17-year-old rookie in the mid lane, and Vladdy and Kaliste are young guys making their international debut as well. So it really boils down to who has international nerves or who doesn't play at the level that they had domestically, because this happens all the time. You often see rookies when they're up against this top tier echelon on a big stage. They're traveling to play. It's not comfortable for them. That's when you see what the test is. So I'm leaning towards one of those two squads being the one exiting first. But either way, I don't think any team completely flounders and goes 0-5 or anything. I think everyone's picking up at least a win.
I think we get some competition here. I think we get a little bit of a mud fight, maybe at the bottom of this type of rankings. I'd love if we had the upper echelon boxing match where everyone's duking it out, very real classy, old timey type of thing. I think we're going to get a little messy at this event in that regards. I do want to mention Team Liquid has the experience angle and advantage if we're talking, kind of looking at those two type of teams and what they have, of course, with players like Impact, Core JJ, very experienced, and then even players like APA and Yan have gotten a good handful of international experience with this Team Liquid team. The coaching staff, Spawn, they've had their trips and trials and tribulations on the international stage, and I think that you can look at that as an advantage for a team like Team Liquid compared to something like Carmine Corp, but that doesn't mean that there isn't experience there when you look at a player like Kana and others for this Carmine Corp team.
I can see the vision through the multiverse. NA is no stranger to it, where I could see Team Liquid beating Hanwha, being the only team to beat Hanwha in the group stage, and then they lose to Flying Oyster as their only win is against Hanwha. They lose the tiebreaker to Flying Oyster and don't get out. I could see that angle for an NA team, sure.
I'm really struggling. I'm doing the whole, Doctor Strange. I'm finding the one timeline where it exists that Team Liquid can get this against Hanwha Life. I think there certainly are lots where they're competitive against them and finding angles. I don't know about maybe pulling it off the magical feat heist of getting that win against Hanwha Life. We should have a competitive event at this one, the way it goes, and thinking that, again, knowing the way that Fearless can be should spice things up at the very bare minimum when you're looking at this compared to what we've had at previous Worlds events, or even better comparison really is looking at MSI and comparing where we will get with this. And I think Fearless is going to do a lot of the heavy lifting for this event.
And that leads us to what the surprises will be at this event. Yes, okay, Team Liquid winning the whole event. That'd be a real surprise, but when you look at players and champions, what kind of surprises are we looking for? And as you mentioned, Fearless, there's got to be some spicy picks that are coming. Number one, we're on this new patch heading into Act 2 for First Stand. Obviously, now players have a split under their belt to kind of, maneuver what some of the spicy picks are. And people cook something up a little extra when we get on the international stage. And for craziest pick that I think we're seeing at this event, I'm going El Clasico crazy pick, the one that people always cheer for. I think we see a teemo sighting, Mark. And here's how I'm going to say we're getting a teemo. Number one, there's never been more fights over neutral objectives. There's so many. It's constant fighting and controlling over Void Grubs, Rift Herald, Otacon, Baron. No one's better at controlling these spaces than the shrooms out of Mr. Teemo. Number two, lane swaps pretty much removed thanks to Rito. So Teemo, a terrible lane swap champion, but a lane bully. Akin to an AP Vayne. We'll throw him out there in that kind of category. And number three, Zeus is an absolute psycho. And Teemo is a champion that you don't really need to practice that much. And we know Viper has played Teemo in the past, so he's probably saying, Zeus, you gotta try Teemo, my brother.
I was gonna say, I don't think the Shy is heading towards this event. What do you mean you're talking? And then I started listening. I might be wanting a healthy sized glass of that Kool-Aid. I might be all on board of getting teemo at this event. That'd be a fun one. I think the other angle you can talk about, so many people, I don't know where we go from here, whether it's the classic of Zed that everybody always wants to see, an assassin, true assassin in the mid lane, bringing that type of excitement, or you can go the angle of almost never seen the rare sighting, something like a Neferi out there in the mid lane.
Who's that? What champion's that? Huh?
right, exactly, type of thing. So I think that's one of the ones I'm more so interested. Again, we talked about this with Fearless. It really isn't about so much so the unique picks in these situations. It's about us building a composition out of having to maneuver around what champions are available type of thing. I think that's where the interesting angle could be. Doesn't mean that you don't have the pocket picks coming through in this one. And that's the other angle that I want to talk about that we've seen in Fearless is players weighing that value of, okay, is this meta? And then where's the surprise angle? And then weighing in something that we've known to be part of the equation, but usually only when you start getting into the best of series, not in the single ones. It is that individual champion pool. It is that mastery, that preference over something that can take it to the next level. And we absolutely have got players that have preferences, that have individual champions that they like. I'm talking about someone like APA, of course, with Team Liquid. We know so much about the Ziggs pick. We know about the Aurelion Sol pick that we see so much. I want something a little bit more spicy. He's one of those guys that I want to challenge to be bringing something a little bit outside the box type of thing. And the other player I want to talk about, I think Yike on Carmine Corp could bust out something a little bit crazy in the jungle. The jungle is going to be this area where we're going to be tested and tempted with Darius as the
he's going to be coming through.
But I don't think that's really as spicy as you might be led down a path to believe type of thing. I think this is going to be relatively standard. I hope Yike can bring something to change it up a bit.
I mean, Yike's a guy that we've seen show up big time internationally and was at times the best performer on G2 at both MSI and at the World Championship. We know his smites were absolutely disgusting throughout the playoff run, but I think you mentioned APA having a spicy pick. I think that's a guy who actually levels up and pops off here because we've seen him now have a couple international duds, after dominating domestically. I think Worlds last year was a little bit disappointing, and I think he had a slow start this year. I think this is a guy who's going to be looking to prove something at this event and really be locked in.
Yeah, at least the past 2, maybe 3 times we've seen Team Liquid at an international event. We've prefaced the whole event, previewed with it, with talking about APA and Yon as those 2 young pillars, those cores for this Team Liquid team that you need to evaluate them, need to get experience, need to level up, need to learn all the way through these things. Pretty much the evaluation was maybe it was last year or especially was this year that you had to start delivering, had to start adding on power from what we have seen and gone through at these events. Didn't really see that from APA this split, and now this is going to go through this split. You look back at the last 1 or 2 events, you came out of it not really talking about APA, you were talking about Yon and what he did in the bottom lane and the strides that he has shown and growth in his career. Time for APA to do the same and again rise up to that level that Team Liquid needs him to be at if they're going to be a serious contender at this event.
And he's got a perfect opportunity to do that on day 1 action. Finally, Riot says, why don't we just cook up the optimal day 1 schedule? We get NA versus EU and LCK versus LPL.
There's no messing around here, folks. We know it. This is your favorite restaurant. This is your favorite dish. This is what you get to drink with it. Come on, sit down. We'll have it out for you in 10, 15 minutes. Perfect job from Riot Games here. NAEU, LCK, LPL, and yes, unfortunately, LCP Flying Oysters, you got to take the back seat on the day. But I think even you are going to be sitting there in the stands with your popcorn and your drink at your stand, ready to watch this excellent League of Legends. This is great. A+ first day for this first stand event.
And I think it might be beneficial for the Flying Oysters to sit out day 1, sit in the crowd on the notebook and see what's going on, get a feel for the stage, the venue, for how the play style are going to be amongst these teams. So actually beneficial for them. But yeah, absolutely. Time and time again, these international events, way more for EU and NA teams. I feel like we talk about how important your first match is and getting momentum early on. And I really think whoever wins that NA versus EU one, like the mindset that the team's going to have going forward is going to be such a boon to have that series win. That's, let's face it, both TL and KC see that matchup and check winnable, because it has to be when there's an LCK and LPL team.
And it gives you that boost for the squad that's getting that win out of there. It gives you a little bit of that safety, a little bit of that breathing room as you move, again into this, the next stage, which will be the Tuesday for this event. Again, we're pretty rapid fire as we move through this week for first stand. The other side of it is that loser. I feel like losing in this NA versus EU head to head is going to be easier to swallow, easier to say, okay, recenter, refocus, get back out there and reapproach what we need to do, compared to a deflating losses as it could be from an LCK or LPL opponent. And then at the same time, the very next match, LCK versus LPL, the big rivalry, the big showdown, the big titans at the event, you get to see them right out of the gate. Day one, good stuff.
And, KC gets the potential 2-0 because they start the next day against CFO. So there's a 2-0 angle start for them, whereas Team Liquid has to get right back on the Rift against Top Esports on day 2 action. But I think Hanwha comes in swinging and immediately makes sure they know, everyone else knows, remembers that the LCK is the premier region and they're the overall tournament favorites. The NA versus EU is more of a coin flip matchup for me. And again, really is about how do the rookies perform in their debut match for KC.
Yeah, I think this is really where you're examining it. And that's where, again, the conversation about a player like APA comes to the forefront, where you need to say, okay, examine yourself and your opponent across the rift. Vladian, yes, he can have all the positives that you talk about from the LEC. He hasn't proven it the way and you've been tested and what you've been challenged with over the course of your career. Can you step up and deliver that performance for Team Liquid? I think is one of the big challenges that you would lay out. I'm going with the kind of the RKO, surprise slam angle here. I'm going K-Corp getting the win against Team Liquid, only to get slammed by the Oysters, because the Oysters have been watching everybody getting a little bit of thing. And then I think K-Corp is maybe going to be a little high on themselves after the Team Liquid win. Could be some spicy action on a Tuesday. I am excited for first stand.
Yeah, and I think, again, as we said, there's no bad teams at this event. International events past, even MSIs, we've had some teams that you go, wow, there's a clear gap below everyone else. All 5 of these teams are solid and can, I'm not going to say can beat anyone, but can be competitive against anyone at this event. It's an absolute blitz over basically 6 days, but can't wait to cover it all here. But that is it today for League Unlock. Eric and Mark here with you, beauties. Thanks for hanging out as always, and we will catch you on that flippity flip.